Hey there. Okay, I'm trying to figure out if I talk about this as the title, what do we put our hope in? I also end up addressing a lot about identity. That's going to be a part two, I believe, because like if I had to say this is what I was created to talk about, this is what my life's goal is on this earth. If I was to really say, God, I'm going to do what you want me to do. It's to talk about identity because I've just had an entire going on 14 years since Rocky died, and it would be in 2010 in May, is who am I? Who am I without Rocky Cuts Forth? And so I'm going to try to this is the topic today. We're going to say is what do we put our hope in? I bet you can guess the answer, but I'm going to do the long story. Like my one cousin Beth one time was listening to me and she's like, she asked me a question and then like 10 minutes later she goes, so circling back, what was whatever she was asking me. And I'm like, oh yes, bunny trails. Yeah, I get on them frequently. Anywho, what do we put our hope in? When I was really young and from a very early age, I wanted popularity. If this is possibly a secret, it's out now. And all through school, I thought that popularity was the answer because I didn't know any better. I didn't realize that what I really wanted was acceptance. And to a large degree, I was accepted. I didn't really have a lot of enemies. You know, occasionally I'd do something really stupid and be a crappy friend and have a little trouble there. But for the most part, I did okay. But then when I got to, like 20s and 30s, and very commonly, as anyone else, I was trying to figure out who I am. I was trying to build something. For me, it was, I went to college for a while. College did not go well for me. I was just really, I want to say, have the spirit of stupid on me. So didn't really apply myself and did not focus on the right things. It was just a bad deal all around. And then I met Rocky, and then I was like, oh, ta-da, life is going to be grand and perfect. Well, I just went through more of, instead of trying to gain popularity, trying to gain acceptance, it was more building reputation. My reputation is good. My reputation at that point, then I went all in with God. And from about 22 or so, I was like, God, I don't know what this is going to look like, but the worldly stuff and party and live however you want and, whatever, live outside of any of the boundaries that God would place within us. If we say we're Christians, I'm like, I'm done with that. I don't like it. It's unfulfilling. It makes me feel empty. It makes me feel lonely and I don't like myself. So I'm going all in with you. And so within that realm, I was, doing just what everybody else does. You're finding who you are. Some people build their career. Some people are, getting married. I got married. I started having kids and, just trying to get rid of some of my emotional baggage because I had a whole lot of it at that point. and what I put my hope in then was, who could I be? Could I be this great mom and this great wife? And could we eventually be, successful with, life and Rocky's job and on and on and on, and putting a lot of pressure on my husband and that my kids had to behave, because that would make me a successful mom. Pressure on my friends of who they had to be according to what I thought they had to be to me, and then even I want to say, not so much like idolizing people, but putting more on people that did have, I had really amazing mentors and wise people around me from the time I was just early, even late teens, before I knew God, really knew the Lord, that God put some women into my life that worked at my parents' restaurant that really spoke into my life and showed me a different way of living that I wasn't living at all at the time. And then in my early 20s and 30s, that God just brought people alongside me to just be like, this girl needs help really bad to get rid of this emotional baggage, to learn how to really walk with me and trust me and so on. And so that was amazing. But I also had a lot of I want to just say, I didn't always even say it to them, but that there was some pressure that I expected, some expectations that I expected. And my hope was in them that they would tell me the right thing. And then life goes on, you get a little bit more successful financially, whatever, expand your house, all these different things. And I'm like, that's put my hope in that. And then, I went through some really, really hard things that I was very desperate, dealt with some really bad health issues, especially around age 32 and for some time there. And that kind of went up and down. Lost Rocky, hit this, all of a sudden accident, and he's gone. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, there's so much I have to deal with that's just made me feel just desperate. And then go through business things that I'm like, oh my gosh, financially, this is just, just feeling absolutely, like things could be hopeless, not knowing the outcome. And realizing in these different times, because it happened to me not just one time, and it just happened to me multiple times, is that I realized my only hope was Jesus. Like my only hope was God. And I could go down the path of self-destruction. I could start drinking. I could start checking out with life, and I could go and, live in whatever way I wanted, or I could just put my nose to the grindstone. Is that even a saying anymore? I don't know. But, just continue to be a good mom to the best of my ability, and to just try to keep myself upright, make good decisions, and look to God for the wisdom and for the hope that somehow, as I declared in my life after Rocky died, Romans 8:28, God will work all things together for good for those that love him and are called according to his purpose. And it wasn't that all good things will happen. It says God will work it for good. So in that, there's the little, but there can be bad things that happen. And so I had to realize I couldn't look at the circumstances. I couldn't rely on money. I couldn't rely on other people. I couldn't rely on my own bad self, that I was going to be all with the answers and doing everything right, because I wasn't. And nobody was going to save me except the Lord could save me. He was the only one that could turn things around. And in every situation, I got a little bit stronger, built a little bit more spiritual muscle, got a little more humble. And even with that, I say I got a little more humble, because I think naturally people, if we can do things in our own strength, we will. And I know that there's a lot of things I can do in my own strength. And then there's also things about me that I know I'm just pitiful and ridiculous, truly, truly. And there's times where I'll still kind of step into that. Try not to be pitiful and ridiculous, but there are times where I'm just like, oh my goodness. That's the only words I can think of, but because it's true. But that I don't need to stay there either. I don't need to stay pitiful, because through Jesus, I can do all things. And so I'm not relying on my own strength, and I'm not full of ego, but I'm also not the loser of all losers, because I have Jesus in me. He died, he rose again, he conquered everything. I can do everything through him and in him, and he works through me. So I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about the outcome. I trust in him. So one thing I want to mention that I just thought was really a cool thing, and it has been so perfect as I get older, is my pastors in Minnesota, Jay and Michelle Pepin. Love them, miss them, they're amazing. Michelle said one time, she was talking to the congregation or a women's meeting. Anyway, I was listening to her, and she said, I have found out that the older I get, the less I know. And I was like, how could you possibly say that? Because, she was just so wise, and she always had these amazing golden nuggets from heaven that she would share. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. And I always was like, how would you think the older you get, the less you would know? But as I realized, the older I got, the less I know, because God is just that amazing, unbelievable. And he doesn't just have one outcome for you. He can have 15,000, and they can all be good. And he can have 100,000 or 1,000,000 outcomes out of one tiny thing for all kinds of people. Nobody on this earth can do that. Only God can do that. And he has wisdom beyond anything that we have. He has resources beyond anything that we could ever imagine. And he has an army beyond what we could ever imagine. And he has all of this and the intellect and just there's so much that it's like, why would we think we could put our hope in anything else? But we do it just subconsciously. I mean, I do it all the time. I just love God with all my heart, and I try to live for him and keep him literally at the forefront of my mind all the time. And I feel like I have kind of a dialogue going all day long with the Lord, but oh my gosh, I can do things in my own strength and then be like, no, that's not going so well. Or I don't know where the scripture is, but it says that a man can plan his steps, but the Lord is the one who ultimately, it's in the Old Testament. I'm massacring the saying, but basically you can plan your days, but the Lord is the ultimate decider of how you're going to do something. And he does give us free choice. He's not controlling and he's not a dictator, but he has these amazing plans. So when we align with him, when we come alongside him and say, hey, I want to do it your way, what would you have for me? That's where we're going to have the best outcome. And you might have a little bit of a bumpy road in the meantime, but stay faithful, because you don't grow weary in well-doing, because in the end, you will reap the harvest, right? But you have to sow like a farmer. You're sowing the seed, sowing the seed, sowing the seed, and you wait, and you wait, and you wait, and you wait. And then the harvest comes. So in the same thing, in the same way, is we put our hope in Christ, and we wait. Sometimes we have to wait a long time. There's things I've waited a long time for, but I can't lose heart. I can't grow weary in well-doing. I have to just keep the faith, keep going. So I hope that was a blessing to you, and I will see you again.